In these questions, we're going to be practicing applying what we know about fundamental particles. Here, we're given a quark with composition UDC, in other words, up-down charm. First, we're asked, what type of particle is it? Well, we know that particles made up of quarks are hadrons, and there are three types. There are baryons, which are made up of 3 quarks, antibaryons made up of 3 antiquarks, and mesons made up of 1 quark and 1 antiquark. So since this is made up of 3 quarks, up, down, and charm, this is going to be a baryon. Next, we're asked, what is the charge on up, down, charm? So we're going to have to look at our table. Up has a charge of 2/3 E. Down has a charge of negative 1/3 E. And charm has a charge of plus 2/3 E. So the total charge of our baryon is going to be found by adding the charge of our quarks together. And if we add together 2/3, subtract 1/3, and add another 2/3, that gets us 1. So our charge is going to be plus 1 E. Finally, let's complete the table with values for the other properties of this particle made up of up, down, and charm. So does it have bottomness? Well, the only quark that has bottomness is bottom, and there's no bottom in this particle. So there's going to be no bottomness. As for charm, we do have 1 charm in our particle, and charm has a charm of plus 1. We don't have any strange quarks in our overall particle, so there's not going to be any strangeness. That's going to be 0. And there are also no top quarks in our particle, so the topness is also going to be 0. So in this type of question, all we need to do is firstly apply what we know about different types of particles: baryons, antibaryons, mesons, leptons, and antileptons. Then we need to add the charge of each of the fundamental particles that make up our particle in order to find the overall charge. And finally, use your table to figure out what other properties your particle has. In this question, we're told a student is looking for a meson that has a charge of negative E, a charm of negative 1, and it has no strangeness, topness, or bottomness. So we're given 4 examples of quark combinations that could be our particle that we're looking for, and our goal is to figure out which of these particles matches the student's description. So to analyze this, we're going to go through each of our 4 example particles and figure out all of their properties and then see which one matches. Our first particle is made up of a down and an anti-charm. So 1 quark and 1 antiquark. So that particle type will be a meson. Next, we're asked about the charge. So looking at our table, a down has a charge of negative 1/3 E. And then it's got anti-charm. Charm has a charge of positive 2/3. Anti-charm is going to have a charge of negative 2/3 E. So we've got a total of negative 1/3 E plus negative 2/3 E, which gets us overall negative E for our charge. Then we need to figure out if we have charm, strangeness, topness, or bottomness. Well, we've got 1 anti-charm in there, which is going to give us a charm of negative 1. And then we've got no strange top or bottom particles. So those are all going to be 0 for strangeness, topness, and bottomness. Our next quark combination we're looking at has an up and an anti-charm. So again, this has a quark and an antiquark, so that's going to be a meson. For the charge, up has a charge of plus 2/3 E, and anti-charm is going to have a charge of negative 2/3 E. So overall, our charge is going to be 0 for up and anti-charm together. Since we have an anti-charm, our charmness is again going to be -1. And then we've got no strange, top or bottom, so those are all going to be 0 for strangeness, topness, and bottomness again. Our next quark combination has a down and an anti-top. So again, it's a quark and an anti-quark, so that is a meson. For the charge, down has a charge of -1/3 e. Top has a charge of +2/3 e. So anti-top is going to have a charge of -2/3 e. So we've got -1/3 e for the down and -2/3 e for the anti-top. So added together, that gets us -e for our charge. Then for our other properties, we have an anti-top. Top has a topness of +1, so anti-top has a topness of -1. But we've got no charm, strange, or bottom particles, so our charm, strangeness, and bottomness are all going to be 0. Then for our last particle here, we've got an anti-up, an anti-down, and an anti-charm. So 3 anti-quarks. So this particle type is going to be an anti-baryon because it's made up of 3 anti-quarks. For the charge, up has a charge of +2/3 e. So anti-up is going to have a charge of -2/3 e. Down has a charge of -1/3 e. So anti-down is going to have a charge of +1/3 e. Then charm has a charge of +2/3 e, so anti-charm is going to have a charge of -2/3 e. So we've got -2/3 e plus 1/3 e, -2/3 e. So that's going to give us an overall charge of -e. Then we have an anti-charm particle. Since charm has a charm of +1, anti-charm has a charm of -1. And then we've got, again, no strange top or bottom in there, so our strangeness, topness, and bottomness are all going to be 0. So finally, let's figure out which of these particles is the one we're looking for. We're told we're looking for a meson. So it's not going to be that last row that was an anti-baryon. Next, we're looking for something with a charge of -e. So it's not going to be that second row there because that had a charge of 0, but it could be any of the others. So far we've still got rows 1 and 3 as possible options. Then we're told it has a charm of -1. That cancels out our third row option, which had a charm of 0. So that leaves us with just the first row being all correct so far. Finally, we're told it's got no strangeness, no topness, or no bottomness. And for our first row, that's true for all of those. We've got 0 for strangeness, topness, and bottomness. So that means row 1 is going to be our correct particle, which was down and anti-charm. So we can go ahead and fill that out in our answer here. So these question types, all we're doing is going through a bunch of different quark combinations and figuring out all their properties based on the information from the table down here and seeing which of those is going to match up with the one we're looking for.